everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Chinezeslife. For those of you who may be new to my channel, and especially this segment of my channel, what this is a review of the latest episodes of Insecure, which if you're not familiar with is a bomb show on HBO, so definitely check it out if you haven't. And of course, before I get into this video, I definitely want you to know that if you have not watched season 4 of Insecure, let alone season 4 episode 4, do not continue watching this video unless you want it to be spoiled for you. But go ahead and watch that episode and then come on back here and we'll be good to go. So now that that's all explained, let's go ahead and get into season 4 episode 4 of Insecure, which is titled Low-Key Losing It. So some of the first things that we notice as this episode begins is that we're now 1 month away from Issa's huge event, which is the block party. As you guys may know, Issa's been organizing this alongside with Condola. And just something for me, since I was so used to scheduling posts and just making sure that, you know, events are planned out well as far as different duties that I had in undergrad, and then even at my most recent job where I just had to make sure that posts were scheduled out. Social media is no joke, guys. Like, actually posting consistently and promoting an event and actually promoting it to the point where people who need to see it are seeing it is important. So that was just a little note on that. I was just like, okay, Issa, I see you scheduling that post. Like, that's what I used to be doing over there on Facebook. So we learned that Condola has not been getting back to Issa. Like, she even put the little meme where she's like looking over, because she's just like, sis, like, it looks like Issa has now sent Condola a series of texts, and also Condola finally responded and was like, oh girl, I'm gonna call you. But I guess that days have passed now. Being that Issa and Condola are working together on certain things, because we saw that Issa did get a call from someone basically being like, hey, like, you know, we need the flyer by XYZ time today, because if you want it to be printed in time, like, you know, we have to get it printed out today. And something so simple for Condola to get back to Issa on is just kind of like, she doesn't want to go ahead and just give the guy the okay without consulting Condola first. But then it's kind of like she's tried to reach out and has gotten zero response. So at that point, Issa just takes matters into her own hands and decides to just, you know, call Condola and be like, hey girl, been trying to reach you. Like, she even follows up with a text. So I'm hoping that, you know, we hear from Condola in next episode. I feel like Condola was giving me like college group project vibes, because in high school I feel like it was harder to get away with that because the teacher used to be OD on you. But in college, it's like we had to be the ones to chase after our classmates to be like, hey, did you do your part? Hey, did you do your part? Hey, can you get back to me? Hey. Like, some people just don't respond well in like group project settings, so it's just kind of like, I don't know, like, so that must have really been frustrating and annoying for Issa to kind of like, it's like we're supposed to be working on this thing together and then you kind of just go MIA. It seems like her event is kind of like falling apart. The main headliner dropped out. Condola's not getting back to her. And she, you know, she kind of just brings it up to Lawrence, like, on the low. She's just like, yeah, you know, and I've been trying to get in contact with Condola, but, you know, I haven't really been able to reach her. And then he's just like, oh yeah, about that. And then Issa's just kind of like, what do you mean about that? Like, what happened? She ends up getting a call, which is actually when she gets told that her headliner has dropped out. So now it just seems like her whole world is crashing down. And then Lawrence is basically just like, yeah, you know, we'll catch up later and I'll tell you later. I'm just like, I know that Issa was frustrated in this moment, but I'm like, I would have pulled for more. I would have been like, listen, you know, like, the worst has already happened. Like, what is it? Just tell me. Like, I don't want to have to wait and then have to meet up again. Like, we're already both here in person, so why not just talk about it? You know what I mean? So some other things that we can definitely make a note of in this episode was, one, Molly kind of like seemingly just treating Andrew like he's just a side, to me at least. Because it's like certain things, like, yeah, she was busy with work, but certain things she just like voluntarily chose work over him when she didn't even have to. Like, there was a scene where she was with her female coworkers and they were all working late night, like after hours on a case. And basically one person had left and was like, oh yeah, you know, she has to get home for XYZ. And then Molly's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna stay longer. And one of them was kind of like, don't you have like a listening party or something to go to? And she's like, nah, it's fine. So it's just kind of like she's treating Andrew literally like an afterthought. And that was something that he later brought up in the episodes as well. Because even when he did come over, she was busy with work and he ended up like falling asleep. And again, like, obviously, like, I'm not saying like, you know, push all your work to the side and only 100% focus on the person that you're seeing. but it just kind of seemed like, you know, the effort wasn't really there. It's kind of like she's just like, oh yeah, well, yeah, like you can come over, but then I'm gonna be doing my work. It's kind of like, if you know that someone is coming over, like the work can wait. And we even also see this as Molly and Andrew finally do get to go out, and then Molly, you know, tries to make spontaneous plans, which again, that's a nice touch. She kind of sees that, you know, she hasn't been able to be that present in their relationship in the past few weeks or so. And she's like, you know what, like, let me go out of my way, make spontaneous plans. And Andrew basically is like, oh, like, I thought that you would be working after this, so, you know, I'm gonna be hanging out with the boys after this. Which, again, is totally fine, but it's kind of like a miscommunication on both parts, because it's kind of like, yeah, Molly wanted to keep what the after plans were as a surprise, but then also to Andrew, it's like, to him, he didn't even think to bring it up, to be like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm gonna be doing XYZ afterwards. Because to her, she was kind of like, whoa, like, isn't it our date night? And then to him, it's kind of like, yeah, but like he's used to her calling the nightcap. So it's like, you can't necessarily blame either party in this situation, but it is kind of sucky because now it's literally like he's having to choose between his friends, which he already made these plans with, or having to choose her, who just sprung up these last minute plans and who also has kind of been treating him legit like an afterthought, which is actually what he said too. I like how she was open and honest and was kind of like, you know, like this is the first time that I've actually like, you know, had a relationship this serious and make it this far, so she's not really sure how to, you know, have that work and relationship work-life balance all said and done, you know. And I think that he was very understanding of that, because he even was like, oh, like, do you want me to go ahead and cancel with my friends, or like, what do you want me to do, type thing. So Molly and Issa's relationship, of course, one of the main catalysts of this season 4, and as we can see, the passive aggressiveness had started from jump. But one of the most annoying scenes was when they were fighting over the car spot. At first, I was just like, do they not recognize each other? Like, how come they're going so hard for this parking spot? But then, you know, they finally get inside, and it's just kind of like with every little thing that's said, like, Molly is taking anything that Issa says and is taking it to the next level, always responding to specifically her with like a shady comment. Basically, Issa had cracked a joke and Molly took it like so offensively, and Issa was just like, I know, like, I was joking. And it was just kind of like really awkward after that. And then there's a point that Molly goes basically upstairs with Tiffany and Issa is left downstairs with Kelly, and Issa just kind of asks Kelly, because we see that, you know, obviously Kelly and Tiffany are closer, Molly and Issa are closer, but we see in this moment that, you know, Issa kind of has a one-on-one with Kelly, and she's like, hey girl, like, have you noticed anything off with Molly? And she's like, you know, like, I didn't mean to like involve you in this or whatever, but like it just feels like things have been weird. And of course, Kelly, who's not around Molly that often, of course she's like, oh no, like she didn't notice anything, whatever the case may be. But then Issa's kind of just like, you know, like left pondering, being like, And then, of course, Lawrence comes into the scene and Issa basically goes off to talk to him. And I also like how Tiffany, you know, spoke on how her pregnancy journey has been and just kind of showed the real side. Because like she said, like, pregnancy is made out to be like so glamorous and so fun, and it's painful. Like, that labor is painful. Even the pregnancy as a whole is painful. Like, it's not. And I really like how Tiffany was able to be transparent with her friends and kind of just speak on the pregnancy as a whole. Because of course, at least as far as we're concerned, this seems like Tiffany is the first one in her friend group to go through pregnancy and childbirth and all of that. And it's really just showing the rawness of, like, especially how you feel, like, straight out. Like, that's when that postpartum depression tends to start hitting. And I really like how, you know, she was just able to finally see her friends, and even them seeing her like that, like not all done up, like this is just her on like day 3 of no showering or whatever it is that she said. And I also like how she was able to speak on, like, you know, her experience in the maternity ward, because even Tiffany was saying that, you know, she was complaining about having some pain and the doctors were just like, you know, like brushing it off, like, oh, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. It wasn't until Derek, you know, kept on yelling at the doctors, be like, there's something wrong with my wife, there's something wrong with my wife, that they finally discovered that she had a blood clot. So it's kind of like, we have to do so much literally just to stay alive, and childbirth as a whole is already so risky and so dangerous. And it's like, we as Black women have to always like take that extra step for our health, because honestly, if we don't, who will? So that's why I think it's so important that we have so many Black healthcare professionals that are actually looking out for us. Because again, like, most of these doctors are not checking for us. Like, they'll just brush your problems to the side, and that's how people end up dying prematurely or end up having extra procedures that they didn't need to, or have things have their conditions worsen, because oftentimes their pain is ignored. And then of course Kelly came with the humor, basically being like, can you leave a Yelp review for a maternity ward? And I'm like, honestly, that's a good question though. I feel like you can leave reviews for hospitals, but for specific parts of the hospital, I don't know. But someone should invent that, just saying. So we also cut to the scene with Molly and Tiffany basically just, bonding and talking. Molly being like, oh, can she hold the baby? So it's just a nice friend moment, being able to hold your friend's child for the first time. But then Molly, of course, is always bringing some sort of drama with her. So she basically asks Tiffany, like, oh, like, has anything been up with Issa? So it's kind of like the question that Issa asks Kelly about Molly. Now Molly is asking Tiffany about Issa. And I believe that Tiffany's response is just somewhere along the lines of, like, it just seems like you guys just need to talk it out. Like, it just seems like there's a communication issue, which I really like, because sometimes it can seem like Tiffany is, like, so far gone or, like, so aloof. But I think that this was really just a moment where she's like to Molly, like, I think you guys should just talk about what it is, because it seems like maybe you guys are having the same issues, and if you just talk it out, then it could get worked out. But then, of course, Molly, we already see her giving Issa the side eye. She sees her out of the window with Lawrence, and I think what she said to Tiffany was like, like, she's judging me for being messy, as if, like, her own life isn't messy too, or whatever the case may be. And then she, like, looks down at her with Lawrence. Whole time they're just talking about literal work stuff. You're passing your insecurities of your own relationship or your own life onto me, thinking that just because things may not be working out for you, or just because things may not be working in your favor, that it also has to be like that for me. So I feel like that's kind of what it is with Molly. Like, she's just like insecure in herself, that she kind of just like passes on these microaggressions to her friends, and specifically to Issa, her best friend, whom she talks to the most. Because why is she just being so extra judgy? Instead of her asking like, oh hey, like, what were you and Lawrence talking about? You're just assuming that, she's just gonna duck off with him. Because when Issa finally does come back inside, after taking that important call and basically finding out that, she has no more headliner, she decides that, it's best to just leave and go ahead and get a head start on this. Which again, sometimes work does get in the way of whatever it is that you're doing. And of course, Molly happens to see Lawrence leaving at the same time. So of course, here goes judgy Molly being like, like, I think obviously it was just a coincidence that they ended up leaving at the same time. But again, to Molly, she's probably just like, yep, you're probably about to go be messy with Lawrence. Like, you didn't even ask me what was wrong. You just proceeded to pass your judgment onto me, which again, isn't fair. Because as a friend, like, how can you do that to me, It's like, clearly you can see I'm frustrated, and then you're gonna assume the first thing that I'm doing is gonna go hook up with my ex, versus being like, hey, like, what's going on? Is there anything that we can help you with? Like, let us know, like, if it'll be okay, or I'll check up on you later. Molly just kind of is just like, nope, time to be judgy instead. And also, just a sidebar, I absolutely love how Tiffany's baby had the future AKA hat. I was just like, So one of the last things that I want to point out from this episode is basically the state of the block party, because as we see it, Condola still has not gotten back to Issa. Issa still has no headliner. And now Issa's just kind of like, like, she's got to use her resources, try to pull some strings. We see her trying to DMs, first starting with Beyonce saying that she's dying, and then scaling back and being like, like, let me look up local LA artists. And then it comes to her attention that she's like, oh, duh, Andrew works for, like, Live Nation. Like, they do music stuff. So basically, Issa calls up Molly while she's at work, and she's just like, hey, do you have a second? And then Molly's just like, yeah, like, what's up? And then, of course, Molly being Molly, Molly starts talking about, yeah, it's just been such a long day, da-da-da. Clearly, Issa called you, so clearly Issa has something to say. So the fact that you kind of just took over the conversation just had me feeling, like, confused, because it's like, is that not, like, a basic thing? Like, if I call you and I say, like, is now a good time to talk, like, obviously there's something on my mind, so I'm not sure what wasn't clicking for Molly. But yeah, so basically Issa just kind of like, oh yeah, oh wow, okay, and then gets to her point, because again, like, Issa don't got time to waste. She's just kind of like, like, let me get to the point of what it is that I'm trying to say. And some people are kind of like, oh, well, if you're about to ask for a favor, you should ask them how they're doing, da-da-da, whatever. I feel like that's cool, but, that's more so for, like, distant people that you don't talk to. This is someone who she talks to on almost an everyday basis. So it's kind of like, it's not out of the ordinary for her to ask her best friend for a favor, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it should have been, like, overly planned out to the point where she's just acting like she's fake interested in what her friend is saying just so that she can finally get to what it is. Because either way, once you ask me for the favor, I'm just gonna be like, I wish you would have just said that from jump, you know? Because now we just wasted minutes on the phone when we could have just been off, cool. Like, obviously Issa cares about Molly's well-being. Obviously she would want to hear about her day, but maybe that just wasn't the time. So basically Molly is just acting like all nonchalant on the other end of the line when Issa brings up the situation, and then Molly's basically like, you know, like, I guess I could ask him. I'm just like, sis, that's your best friend asking you to just ask someone for a favor. Of course, Andrew can say no, Andrew cannot come through, but it's like, it's the least you can do in a sense. So that would have made me feel away off rip if that was already the answer that she was given. Like, she wasn't even happy or giddy or like nothing. She was just like, oh yeah, I guess I could ask. And then, yo, when we finally get to the point where I believe that Molly had called Issa back, Issa was so hype on the other side of the line. She's just like, hey girl, like, you work fast, da-da-da. Only for Molly to basically be like, yeah, girl, like, you know, I didn't ask him and I don't think that I'm going to. And I was shocked. I mean, not super shocked based on how the relationship is going as is, but just more so shocked that, like, she said that with her whole chest. Because that's the thing, Molly, like, she gets to talking and she's bold in what she says, but I'm like, is that really how you're feeling? Like, is that really how you gonna do your best friend? Because, like, the way she said it, like, it was, like, so pre-planned. She's like, yep, I didn't ask him, and I don't think that I'm going to. And Issa's just confused at this point because she's like, whoa, wait, what? Like, what happened? And Molly's response is basically that, you know, like, she values her relationship with him, and she wants to just, you know, protect that, and she wants to just keep it at that. Which basically to Issa makes it seem like, okay, so do you not value my relationship though? Like, it's kind of like, I've known you for longer. Like, this just seems like a guy that, you know, you're just getting to know. Which to me, if I was Issa, that would kind of make me feel away, definitely. Because it's like, do you not care about, you know, like, protecting my relationship? Like, you know, like, what about my feeling? Like, I'm not asking you for too much in that sense. It's really just asking you to ask someone a question. Like, I know obviously Molly doesn't want to be all caught up in it, and then he's going to be like, oh yeah, well, Issa said da-da-da-da, as far as like the actual logistics of the event and everything like that. But at the same time, it's kind of like, what's the point of having connections if you can't use them, you know? And I don't think that Andrew would feel as though he's being used either, because again, this is her best friend. It's not like her random cousin or some random coworker. Like, this is my best friend asking me to ask you if you're able to do XYZ. And if you're not able to do XYZ, then that's fine. And I feel as though as well, like, if my significant other is in a position to help one of my closest friends and I can't even have the balls to ask them, essentially that's really what it is. I just feel like, should I really be with this person if I'm not comfortable enough to ask them for a favor? Because if someone who's close to me is asking me for a favor, and then you're supposed to be this guy who's like, you know, my confidant, my lover basically, and I'm too like afraid, or I feel like it's gonna ruin our relationship, I feel like that relationship is kind of already on like sandy, what is it? Not on solid rock basically. So that was kind of where the episode had ended off. And overall, this was a great episode to me. It obviously wasn't as like fast-paced as some of the other episodes, especially not last episode, but I do think that one of my main questions is just kind of like, where's Condola? What's going on with her and Lawrence? So when is Lawrence going to tell Issa what's going on? Is Condola going to tell Issa what's going on? Like, did they break up? Like, what's happening? Because to me, it kind of seems like maybe they're taking a break, or maybe, you know, like, they're just taking things slower. Because again, over the past few episodes, we clearly see that Lawrence is taking his relationship with Condola way more seriously than he is. Because to her, he kind of just seems like a fling, like someone to just chill with. But to him, it's kind of like, this was someone I was trying to take serious. So it's like, Oh, how could I forget? One of the most important parts of this episode was basically the scene with Lawrence and with Derek inside of the nursery. So basically, they're just both there looking over Derek's baby girl. Of course, Lawrence is kind of like scared to hold her. He's like, whoa, like, I dropped a burrito earlier today. Like, are you sure you want me to hold her type thing? But we basically see that these two men are having a dialogue, and it's revealed that, you know, the baby was kind of a surprise, because apparently Derek and Tiffany didn't want to have a baby until 2 years more into their marriage. They were supposed to be traveling, they were supposed to be building new things, etc., which just kind of shows you, like, just because, like, things look all rosy colored, like, on IG, all that stuff, like, sometimes things happen. Like, sometimes babies just pop up, and it's like, we didn't plan for this, but, you know, we're gonna do the adult thing, and if we choose to raise the child, we're gonna raise this child. So basically that's what Derek and Tiffany are doing. And we even see like little remarks from Tiffany, like being like, oh, like I only like her when she's chill. And then everyone's just like, oh. But she's like, but I still love her though. And I'm like, that just shows again like the realness of the whole parenting experience, because it's like people assume that as soon as you become a parent, you're supposed to be this happy-go-lucky person day in and day out. Even though the baby's crying, you're just supposed to be there smiling. Like, no, like parenting is hard. Like being happy 100% of the time is hard. Not saying that, you know, you shouldn't strive to be happy and you shouldn't strive to like, you know, be motivated to actually parent each and every day. But I just like how they showed that, you know, every day is going to be different. And some days you're just not going to be feeling it. Some days you're going to need your husband or your boyfriend or whoever to just, you know, like take that step up. Because, you know, sometimes you're just going to be like, you know, I don't feel up to it today. I don't feel strong enough. But anyways, back to the scene with Lawrence and Derek. So basically, we see that, you know, they're just talking about like that whole situation. And then Lawrence is just like, you know, you're so lucky, man. Da da da. How does it feel to have a daughter? And then Derek kind of like breaks down. He's like, you know what, man, like before I got with Tiffany, like there was some really messed up stuff that I did. And you know, all those women that I hurt, basically, like all those women are daughters. And you know, this is my daughter. And like what's gonna happen when she's a teenager and like some teenage boy is trying to do da 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 to her? And I was just kind of like, is this really how people think? And being on Twitter, I know that this is really how people think. Some men don't really value women until they have a daughter, which is crazy because a daughter is an infant. So you're telling me that it wasn't until you had an infant that you realize the value of women who are people who are basically your age mates, which is just kind of like all crazy to me, because it's like before she's your daughter and before whoever's daughter that you hurt was a daughter, like we're human first. So to me, that's my main thing. It's kind of like, yeah, of course you did hurt those people's daughters. And yeah, now you have a daughter. But why does it take until you have a daughter to see the value in woman as more than just woman? Like, why can't we just be your equal, being that, you know, like, we're human beings too. Like, I don't think it should take until you have a daughter that you realize the value of women. But sadly, that is the case for many people. Like, they'll go so hard for their daughters and even in turn sometimes be like super overprotective because they know how men are. But it's kind of like, why don't we raise our boys to be better men instead of just inherently thinking that all men are bad and that we must protect our daughters at all costs because all men are bad and they're going to do her wrong? Like, we should both be raising our standards so that no one really has to deal with that pain. No one has to deal with that heartbreak because we're all just looking at each other as equals and as human to human, not necessarily, oh, well, you're a woman and I don't respect women, or now I have a daughter, so now I respect women. So guys, that brings me to the end of this video. Overall, I would give this episode a 7 out of 10. The reasoning for that is that, you know, it definitely just was more slow paced. I did have to play some scenes over again just because like I wasn't really captivated. And then even like as far as like the soundtrack and everything of this episode, I just wasn't really like too captivated or too intrigued by it. But of course the storyline, even though slow, it was still really good. And I think that it was great how we were just able to kind of unpack that friendship between Issa and Kelly, and then we were able to also see the different sides of the friendship with Molly and Tiffany. And of course, another sector of friendship was with Derek and Lawrence, which is probably one of the most controversial or most talked about scenes in this episode thus far. My hopes for next week is that we get some sort of update on what happened between Condola and Lawrence. Also that Molly and Issa finally have this talk, because now that I think about it, did they even have their like official talk after they said they were gonna talk in the grocery store? I don't think so. And I kind of want to see also where this relationship with Molly and Andrew is going. Oh, and we need to see if Issa is going to respond to Nathan, because that was such like a random short moment in this episode, but it was just kind of like a, like, why is it that men just decide to pop back up into your life like nothing happened, like they didn't do nothing, like they didn't disappear for mad long, and then they just want to pop back up like everything is fine and everything is the same when it's really not? I just want to know why. So if you have that answer to that question, please let me know. Issa's probably going to write him back. But me personally, like, if I actually even felt the way that I felt for him in that current time, like, I personally am not going to allow someone back into my life just because, like, it's more so, like, what is your purpose here? Like, what do you want? Like, that's what the conversation is. if there even is a conversation. But sometimes when people be popping back in like that, you just gotta leave them on red. Can y'all believe you almost got up out of here without me telling you, you know, the basics? What actually happened is that my memory card ran out of memory on my camera, and then my audio was still recording. But I said all that to say this: if you are not subscribed to my channel, I would love for you to do so. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and also click on that bell for those bell notifications so that you do know when I am posting a new video. As always, thank you guys so much for the support. I truly appreciate it. Make sure you're following me on Instagram at chinezeslife, which, by the way, I hit 100 followers on there the other day, which I'm super proud of. So if you're not following me on Instagram, that's chinezeslife, as well as Twitter, which is chinezesLens, so that you can catch me over there live tweeting, especially about these episodes and just my more so in-depth thoughts. I appreciate you guys' support as always, and I'm so excited to be bringing you yet another review this time next week. So make sure to check back around, because that kind of will be like the middle of the season. There's usually like 10 to 12 episodes per season. So next week is probably going to be like some huge turning point. So I'm super looking forward to that. So yeah, guys, thanks so much for the support. Appreciate y'all, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.